Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 13 team in my 2023 NFL Deep Dive Series. It's the New York Football Giants, my New York Giants, I'm wearing the shirt. I was planning on wearing the shirt. How many times have I worn the shirt in other videos, my Giants shirt, and then when I do the Giants video, I'm wearing a freaking purple shirt. Whatever. Like and comment, please. That would be great for the algorithms to push this video out. And subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of the future videos in this series. And the New York Giants are the story of a team that last year overachieved to most and accurately achieved to me. I thought that they would be about an 8-9 win team last year. I thought that they were primed to take a step forward with Brian Daboll. I didn't realize that they would look as good as they did, especially winning playoff games. They kept a lot of games close that I don't know a lot of people were expecting them to. Beating Minnesota in the playoff game was really big. Seeing some development from Daniel Jones that superseded the stat sheet. I know people look at the stat sheet and they go, "Oh, he has 15 touchdowns." That didn't tell the whole story, and that's sort of the difficult and irresponsible thing about just sort of watching the stat sheet is that you miss the big picture. And being a Giants fan, I watched every single one of their games, didn't miss a single snap of theirs. So I was able to see, I think with a lot of people, that Daniel Jones was looking like he could be the quarterback moving forward, especially because they were winning. I think if the Giants finished somewhere in like the bottom 5 teams in the league, or even bottom, like was picking top 10, I could see them being one of the teams that would have traded up, kind of like what we saw with Carolina. Just because then it's sort of, okay, you move on from Daniel Jones in that sense. But clearly Daniel Jones is capable of running this offense. And now with a second year in it, with a little bit of better players on the offense that they've added. It was clear that Daboll was adding pieces to the puzzle on the offensive side of the ball. When you saw them draft Eric Gray at running back, when you saw them draft Jalen Hyatt, when you saw them sign Paris Campbell, they signed Cole Beasley as well. You could see that he was putting guys that have specific roles in an offense, and he was going to slide them in place. And then you can also pick out where the backups are for those positions as well. You also saw him focus in on the interior offensive line, taking John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota, who is arguably the best center in the draft. I think inarguably the best center in the draft. And his fit in that offense is going to be immediately an upgrade for them. And then you hope to get a production out of Evan Neal, who they drafted last year, taking that second step forward, kind of like what we saw with Andrew Thomas, who they extended, gave him like the biggest offensive lineman contract in NFL history or something. Then it was retaining Wink Martindale, who there were talks about him potentially leaving to be a head coach. They were able to retain him, and they were also able to add pieces to that defense, and they were also able to retain a lot of the key pieces on that defense. They extended Dexter Lawrence. They drafted Deonte Banks. Trey Hawkins in camp is looking pretty good for, I think he was a 6th-round pick. Not trying to crown the guy yet. It is just training camp, but it does seem like they have figured out a way to get all the pieces in place through free agency and elevate these less than desirable players, kind of like Daniel Jones. I would throw in there Bobby Okereke, who they signed in free agency to come in and be the 3-down linebacker for them. Adoree Jackson, who was sort of like outcasted from Tennessee, who they brought in to be a number 2 corner. Now he's a number 1 corner. They seem to be putting a lot of the pieces in place. Now the scheduling is what is their ultimate downfall this year. They did draw the AFC East, which is going to be a problem and probably is going to be the reason why they don't necessarily improve on that win total that they had from last year. But the NFC itself, outside of that, is also very open in the sense that there's really 3 teams in the NFC that we can really bank on being the top 3 teams: Dallas, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. Now, 2 of those teams are in the NFC East with the Giants, which again is a problem. So they potentially have all 8 of their losses that prevent them from improving on their 9-win season coming just within their division and the AFC East. So that's going to be something they're going to have to really navigate around. They're going to have to hopefully, but this is why you bring in a coach like Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, Wink Martindale, and the scheme that they have. And now with a roster that is more theirs than, say, the previous regimes, it's going to be, I think, drastically improved. But again, the win totals, it's going to be maybe a little harder to come by. But let's get to the coaching staff. This is really the bread and butter of this team and what is really elevating all of these players to probably grade out a little bit higher than they would on, say, with another staff. Let's get to that. So I give the Giants coaching staff the 8th best ranking in the NFL. It is really up there with one of the best. They have the last coach of the year, Brian Daboll, who was the most sought after head coaching candidate last year, and it really panned out for the Giants. He showed drastic improvement over the last coaching staff, the last couple of coaching staffs. Really, it was the best coaching job probably since 2016, the last time the Giants had made the playoffs up until last year. You saw these steps getting taken by the quarterback. You saw these steps getting taken by these wide receivers who were not necessarily big-time names like Isaiah Hodgins, who was being put into position to succeed. And you saw him hold some of the bigger name players really accountable, specifically Kenny Golladay, who people like myself expected to recover from the horrendous run that he had up until that point with the team. And he just never got on the field. Why? Because he just wasn't good enough. And I think that that's an important asset to have as a head coach, is not being married to people simply based upon name value and being based upon what they had done in the past in terms of their contributions and their talents and their stats. He revitalized Saquon Barkley. What they're doing with him in terms of contracts is probably his last year, but we'll get to him. And he also elevated Mike Kafka as an offensive coordinator. We saw Kafka, putting together, some really good play calling variety and strategy and the scheming, of course, based upon Daboll's leadership. But he's really put Mike Kafka into a situation now where Kafka might be somebody who's really sought after in this upcoming offseason to be a head coach. Of course, depending on how well the offense does, if they can maintain or even improve upon what they did last year, which I think that they can do. And then there's Wink Martindale, who is a fantastic defensive coordinator, super aggressive. And now that they've gone out and they've gotten a guy like Deonte Banks, that they've added Bobby Okereke to the linebacking group, that they are getting a healthy defensive line in front four, his ability to be super aggressive as a play caller and as somebody that schemes up defensive plays, and almost like a positionless defense to a degree. There is that level of, you never know where somebody's going to line up. You never know where the blitz is really coming from. And when you have guys like a Bobby McCain, like Jason Pinnock, and Leonard Williams, I think, is another good example of that. You never know where they're going to line up. So you're forcing offensive coordinators and quarterbacks to do a lot of pre-snap analysis, to do a lot of pre-snap reads. Where's Xavier McKinney? Where's Bobby McCain? Where's Leonard Williams? Where's Kayvon Thibodeau? Where's Azeez Ojulari? Are they lined up on the same side? Where's the pressure coming from? Are they shifting? Like, there's so many things that Wink Martindale does. And his players on the defense, they require a lot of versatility. And I think the Giants have done a good job of adding players with that level of versatility, specifically in the secondary, where you can line guys up in the slot just as easy as you can line them up outside. How these players develop, some of the guys like Aaron Robinson, is still, the jury's still out on that. Is he just solely a slot player? Can you play him on the outside for long periods of time and not worry about extreme mismatches? Which players on this team that have sort of been fan favorites for a while are now going to get kicked to the curb? I think Darnay Holmes is a big-time candidate for that. just because he doesn't seem to fit this scheme at all. And they've been drafting guys constantly to replace him, guys like Cordell Flott, who they're hoping takes the next step forward. So there's so much that Wink Martindale is capable of doing, and now with even more pieces that suit his style of defense, like all these new bodies that are coming into the team, I expect the Giants defense to continue to perform at least an above average level. I still think that there is a talent deficiency in some areas where when they run into certain teams like the Cowboys and the Eagles specifically 4 times this year, there's going to be some mismatches on the outside still. Barring Deonte Banks being, a Tariq Woolen or an Ahmad Gardner, there's going to be some growing pains out there that I think some teams are going to be able to take advantage of, especially with how aggressive Wink Martindale is in his play calling. A lot of these guys are going to be left on islands by themselves to cover the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, and that's just 4 games out of the year. Never mind Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, and all these other guys that they're going to be seeing throughout the year. How much is Brian Daboll going to relinquish control of the offense to Mike Kafka? I think we're going to see a little bit more relinquishing of that to Mike Kafka. And if there's a lot of success, I think that's really where Daboll wants to be, is doing the day-to-day stuff, and then during the game coming up with things sort of on the fly like he did last year, and not so much being a head coach that wears a bunch of different hats in terms of being a play caller during the actual game. I think that his real strength and his continued growth as a head coach to get better is going to come with his ability to trust his offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, sort of let him continue to run the show during the game and trust that the scheme and the strategies that they set up during the week is going to work. I think he's done a great job last year of having a strategy and sticking to it and then making halftime adjustments. So I expect that to continue throughout this season. The big thing with this team that's going to really drive this entire roster is Daniel Jones, the question marks surrounding Daniel Jones. And now, as just a pure drop back thrower, I give him a 76 coming into this year, which is not necessarily that high compared to a lot of other guys. I think that his accuracy is top notch, especially if you give him a clean pocket. He's more than capable of picking you apart. I think his throwing on the run has improved drastically as well. I just worry about his ability to throw the deep ball. And when you have guys like Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, and Jalen Hyatt, who are like these straight line speed guys, there is a concern for me that they're going to be able to make the most out of these talents, considering Daniel Jones's limitations in that sense. Now, a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who is capable of separating really quickly, I think that will play into the hands of Daniel Jones a little bit better. But I think if it takes more than just the 3 to 4 step drop for Jalen Hyatt to get that separation from the corner, then it's going to be difficult for Daniel Jones to use these guys to their true abilities. Now, what really does play to Daniel Jones's success is going to be Saquon Barkley and Darren Waller, who they acquired basically for Kadarius Toney in a 3-way trade by the end of it for that 3rd round pick. That's really going to play into Daniel Jones's strengths, sort of like between the numbers, between the hashes, accurate ball throwing with a big catch radius. That's going to work really in his favor. You know, the RPO game involving Darren Waller, I think, is going to be something that they are going to bust out early in the year, and it's going to lead, I think, to a lot of success. And Daniel Jones is, of course, not afraid to run the ball, but I think we're going to see him improve as a passer throughout the year because they have added pieces to the offense that are going to make him better. I'm not so sure that he's the type of quarterback as a thrower that's going to make people around him better. I think that having the right pieces involved in this scheme is what's going to make him better. I just don't think that he's at that place yet where he's the one making the guys around him better. I think that the fact that they committed to him with the 4-year contract, it's really a 2-year contract, but they've left the door open for him to develop into that guy. He's just not there yet. But he is there in terms of being a rushing threat. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL. I would say that he's probably top 5 in that sense. I think you got Lamar Jackson, you got Justin Fields, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Josh Allen, and then I think you have to have Daniel Jones there as the number 5 guy. You can make arguments throughout the year that maybe Bryce Young is going to take that spot, that maybe Anthony Richardson will take that spot. But as it stands right now, Daniel Jones is a guy who you need to account for with your... You have to have a guy designated as a spy, which really takes a full man out of the play, which Brian Daboll, you saw him really use that to their advantage. So that's really where the rushing threat for Daniel Jones has multiple layers to it. Then you got Saquon Barkley, probably in his last year with the team. I expect him to get run into the ground. I expect 360 touches this year for Saquon Barkley in one way, shape, or form if he stays healthy throughout the year. But he's going to be the guy that really helps control this offense. He's going to open up the play action game, which we saw them use to great success last year, especially in that game against the Chicago Bears. They ran the same bootleg play, I think 11 or 12 times in that first half before Chicago was able to make the adjustment in the second half to be able to stop it. And that was so key to them winning that game and them keeping the extending drives and all. I think that Barkley's going to be able to bring that in a multitude of ways throughout the year. And he's going to be a guy who's going to get you 1,300 yards rushing probably this year and a dozen touchdowns. They also have some really good depth to their running game. Matt Breida is like that speedy scat back type who's going to be on the field at the same time as Saquon Barkley. We saw them both on the field at the same time running jet sweeps with Breida, which is a huge advantage to have when you get an actual running back running a jet sweep. Their vision's usually a little bit better, especially because he's got the speed of a lot of these receivers who are designed to run the jet sweep. So I think that's a great advantage too. And I think we could see perhaps some wildcat with Barkley and Breida the way that we saw when Daniel Jones got hurt. I think that could become part of the offense a bit as well too, especially in those like second and short situations. I think that's going to be something they'll pull out as well. And as we get to the receiving back aspect, you have Saquon Barkley who gets an 80. He is a really good receiving back. Now, as a blocker, not that great. We've seen him drop some passes as well. He hasn't really reached what he was in his rookie year, where he looked like he was going to be one of the best receiving backs in the NFL, probably just short of Christian McCaffrey. But there's also a lot of variety in this backfield as well. Matt Breida comes in. He's a really good number 2 guy. He's somebody you can rely on to put in these passing situations. Gary Brightwell's another one. They signed James Robinson, which I'm not so sure he's going to actually make the team now that Barkley has extended his contract. I think he's going to be somebody that's going to make it through camp, and then if somebody gets hurt, he'll maintain his spot on the roster. But if they keep Breida, Brightwell, and then the rookie Eric Gray out of Oklahoma healthy, I would expect Robinson to probably find himself cut, maybe sent to practice squad or something like that. I want to highlight Eric Gray for a moment here. As a guy who can turn around, hand the ball off, I think that him and Matt Breida, though completely different styles of player, I think they can bring the same amount of ability and contributions immediately. I would expect a guy like Eric Gray to get some first down action, maybe some second and short action throughout the season. Not a significant amount, because I think if Barkley's healthy, you have to have him on the field as much as possible. But I think that he will supersede a guy like Gary Brightwell, who we did see get some moments last year as well. I think Eric Gray's sort of going to take that over. I think they drafted Eric Gray perhaps with the intention that he might be the guy that replaces Saquon Barkley as the running back in this offense. We've seen this offense get run in Buffalo with a lot of success with not really having a star running back there. I think it would be a mistake to do what they're doing to Barkley, but they are doing it. And I think that Eric Gray, long term, is probably going to end up being the early down back. And I think that they're going to be looking probably in like late day 2, early day 3 in this next draft for a guy who is like a younger version of Matt Breida, I guess you could say, who can come in and be that third down receiving back and then them do a running back by committee thing and commit their money elsewhere, specifically maybe to the wide receiver group, to the offensive line, into the defense. I could see that being the case, but I do hope that Saquon Barkley, just because he is the prototypical 3-down running back, that he's going to be somebody that's with the team long term and they can figure out a way to make this work for him. I'm just skeptical. I'm skeptical at this point. So now we're going to get to the receiver and tight ends group. And the one thing that I can say about what this group looks like is big catch radiuses and speed and athleticism. I think that's going to be the real theme of this offense this season. We'll start with the breakout player from last year was Isaiah Hodgins. He's like a bigger guy who can maybe play on the outside, but you like him in the slot specifically as like a bigger slot player. That's where he had a lot of success last year, running those slants, those quick outs. He was very good. And him getting re-signed, I think he's going to get a lot of playing time in this offense. And kind of to the same tone as Darren Waller, who you see there, he gets an 80 as a tight end. And the reason he only gets an 80 and not a little bit higher is because there is concern about his health and him being able to maintain his health and stay on the field throughout the season. His contributions, if he does stay healthy, definitely supersede that 80 grade. He's not much of a guy in the running game, though, so that will also affect what happens throughout the year in terms of when he's on the field. So that could actually, in turn, help keep him healthier longer. Then they got Jalen Hyatt, who they drafted in the 3rd round. They were looking at him in the 2nd round. They had him, I believe, 1 slot below on their draft board, John Michael Schmitz, and they ended up getting both of them. So fantastic. He's like that straight line speed guy. We're seeing all the reports of him running 24 miles per hour in a training camp. So we'll see how he develops throughout the year, because he's not, I think that the long-term goal for him is to turn him into the Stephon Diggs of this offense, but he needs to really get into the route running aspect. He's more of just like, you're going to run him on a drag route, you're going to run him on a straight go route, and that's about it. That's where his real talent level is. You can line him up anywhere. You can line him up outside, inside, but he needs to develop more as a route runner to really take that next step forward. I think Isaiah Hodgins is going to be that route runner for this offense as like a bigger guy, and I think that they got some depth pieces that can fill that role as well. Darius Slayton's another guy you just line up on the outside, straight line speed, run some crossers as well. But the theme really is the catch radiuses, because then we get to some of the depth guys. They also got compliments everywhere. Sterling Shepard, Wan'Dale Robinson are like the smaller, pure slot guys. Cole Beasley's another one that you can put into that spot. Then you got Paris Campbell, who's sort of the backup to the outside wide receivers, I would say. He's the straight line speed guy who, if Jalen Hyatt or Darius Slayton are coming out, you're probably going to see Paris Campbell come onto the field to play on the outside. If they're going to move Isaiah Hodgins into the slot. If they're going to bump Hodgins out to the outside, then you'll see probably Sterling Shepard. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be like that gadget play guy that they basically drafted to replace Kadarius Toney when this staff initially came on. Jamison Crowder, I think, is just sort of a camp body at this point, like a veteran camp body who played a little bit in Buffalo, so he understands the offense. And I think that I think he's a camp body, to be honest. And then you got Daniel Bellinger and Lawrence Cager. Cager is sort of basically poor man's Darren Waller. Bellinger, you're getting a little bit more of a pure tight end, like a prototypical tight end, who can be a receiving threat, but I think he's going to be the guy you see on early downs, also assisting with the run blocking. I think that between the three of them, he's the best one. I don't necessarily think that he's a high-level run blocker as of yet, but I think when they acquired Darren Waller, if Bellinger was thinking, about economically, I guess, he probably would want to focus more on becoming a really solid run blocker, because then with a guy like Darren Waller and Lawrence Cager on the roster, you're always going to have a spot on this team, and you're not really going to necessarily lose out on the snaps. You might actually gain more snaps than you would have otherwise. So now let's get to the offensive line, and we'll start with the pass blocking and the left tackle. Guy who just got a big contract, one of the best left tackles in the entire NFL, certainly one of the best pass blocking tackles in the NFL, Andrew Thomas, who didn't make the NFL Top 100 because people, I guess, stopped watching football after Tristan Wirfs' rookie year to not know that Andrew Thomas is way better than him. Yeah, I said it. Andrew Thomas, outside of the rookie year, has been better than Tristan Wirfs. Fight me. The other tackle, Evan Neal, first-round pick last year, really struggled. He really struggled. He was lunging a lot, but what we're seeing in camp from him is a lot more control over his lunging. He's sort of letting the rush come to him and getting his hands on the inside really effectively. We've seen a lot of that for people that have been watching Giants camp. So I expect him to at least take a step. Maybe I don't expect him to take the lead that Andrew Thomas did in year 2, but I expect him to take some sort of step forward. Now, he's going to be facing a lot of chaos this season. He's going to be the guy that gets lined up with Micah Parsons. He's going to be the guy that gets lined up with Hassan Reddick. He's going to be the guy that gets lined up with Montez Sweat. That's going to be the caliber of pass rushers he's going to be facing for at least 6 games out of the season. Then you look at the Dolphins, you expect him to be the one who has to negotiate the blitz pickups. When they play the New York Jets, you're expecting it to be that he's the guy that's going to go up against Carl Lawson. When they play the Buffalo Bills, Von Miller is going to be the one lined up on Evan Neal once he's healthy enough to play. So he's going to be facing the same barrage he did last year, and he's going to need to really improve on how he performed last year. Then you look at the 2 guards. Ben Bredesen is getting the starter reps there. There really are still missing that left guard. They're sort of just throwing guys at that spot until somebody works out. Mark Lewinsky was a free agent signing last year. Underperformed, but picked it up in certain areas throughout the year, and I expect him now to be a little bit more comfortable in the offense, and with a really high-quality center next to him in the rookie John Michael Schmitz, who I think, personally, is a real candidate to be like what Creed Humphrey was in his rookie year, where Creed Humphrey just came in and he was immediately like a top 7 center in the NFL. I think John Michael Schmitz has that ability, specifically in the run game, which we'll get to. But I expect Lewinsky, as a veteran, if he can step up, I think that's going to also help improve Evan Neal, who's standing next to him. And it's going to help John Michael Schmitz as well as he adapts to the NFL. Then you look at some of the depth. They just don't have depth. This is the real issue with this team, is that Ben Bredesen gets those reps because who gets them instead? Do you bump Matt Pert into guard, who hasn't played well since his rookie year? Joshua Zwedu and Marcus McKeithen, who were interior offensive linemen for North Carolina 2 years ago, and I guess not single-handedly because there's 2 of them, but nosedived Sam Howell's draft stock because of how poor that offensive line was at North Carolina. The Giants took both of those guys. Wyatt Davis, who had an up-and-down college career, never really took that second step forward, has bounced around the NFL already. Tyree Phillips, who played in Baltimore, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? Where are his contributions going to come from? It's a really difficult situation for that left guard spot as it stands right now. And in camp, it could be really any of these guys. There's really 6 guys competing for that last guard spot. So it's going to be interesting to see how that ends up happening. So now we take a look at the run blocking, and this is where a guy like John Michael Schmitz does take an immediate step up. His athleticism is really strong, and he really suits the offensive run game that the Giants are going to be running. Andrew Thomas, not as good as a run blocker as a pass blocker, but still just phenomenal at his job. Just phenomenal at his job. You know you're going to get high-quality play from him in all aspects of the game. Evan Neal, sort of the same story as the pass blocking. Expect him to sort of take that next step forward. I think in the run game, he can really gain some confidence. So I expect that to happen. Glowinski is what he is. Bredesen a little bit better at run blocking than at pass blocking. Had some success in Baltimore doing that. And so his ability with that running quarterback, it might help improve throughout the year. And then, Matt Peart is a decent run blocker, as is Tyree Phillips. So maybe Tyree Phillips is the guy that takes over that left guard spot. I think that between him, Josh Izwedu, even though he's not good, and Ben Bredesen, I think those are the three top candidates to play that left guard spot this year. I don't know who I'm hoping it is. I really don't. It could be any of them, and I'll just be like, okay, whatever. I expect that to be the weak spot of the team, and Andrew Thomas sort of making up for a lot of that, hopefully. But that is a glaring hole on this offensive line that otherwise, if they had like a Mark Glowinski equivalent playing the left guard, this offensive line would actually, I think, project to be one of the better ones coming into this year. But that glaring spot, and then of course, what's going to happen with Evan Neal? Is he going to take the step forward, or is he just the barrage he's going to face just murder his confidence, and then he'll never become anything? That's a possibility as well. So it doesn't project as high as it could in comparison to the rest of the league. Now just going over the positional summary here, and again, the offensive line, not a lot of depth there. The depth in this team is in the running back room, and I think in the wide receiver room as well. Overall, though, this is going to be an effective offense, a really effective offense, because they have pieces that suit the team, guys that are being brought back or in key spots, so they get a second full year with this staff where they've been able to watch the film on them and make the adjustments needed, so there's going to be improvements there. I'm just concerned with the depth of the offensive line more than anything else. All things considered, though, this is the 9th best offense in the NFL for me. Player for player, coaching staff, how they're going to improve on these guys. They got the superstar left tackle. There's no reason why this can't be a top 10 offense. 10th passing offense, expect them to be very effective. The play action game, the RPO game, I think is going to be super effective. Their ability, again, the catch radiuses of the wide receivers, I expect them to have a lot of manufactured catches that might not necessarily have happened otherwise for other teams just because of the size discrepancies. And in the run game, I expect this run game to be up there as well. On first down, again, the RPO I think is going to be a giant play for them on first down. It's going to be a giant play for them on second and short as well. There's going to the way that Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Matt Breida are going to sort of meld together is going to be an exciting part of this offense. And they're just short of the top 10, but it is very close. I wouldn't mind saying their passing offense will finish just outside the top 10. And and again, this isn't about necessarily what they would do in terms of stats either. So before you go like, you think Daniel Jones is going to relax. Now moving on to the defense side of the ball, and we'll start with the pass rush. And, of course, the glaring thing there is Dexter Lawrence, who, in my opinion, is a top 3 interior defensive lineman in the NFL. His size in the run game makes him an effective nose tackle, and his athleticism and pass rushing moves that he's developed throughout his career makes him one of the most effective interior pass rushers as well. Worth every penny. And I would gladly say that we traded him basically straight up for Odell Beckham Jr. When you work out the trade that was made. Leonard Williams next to him, he's sort of just not performing at a top level. If he was getting paid half of what he's getting paid, I think I'd be a lot happier with it. I understand why he was signed to the contract he was. He had a great year the year that he signed it, and he was essential to this defensive line. I think he's been essential to the growth of Dexter Lawrence as well. And having his versatility, especially with Wink Martindale, it's an invaluable thing to have. I think on early downs we'll see him playing on the outside, sort of almost like a bigger edge 5 technique, and then on these passing downs he'll end up playing the 3 tech while Dexter Lawrence plays over the nose. The edge rushers, Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau, you're hoping that Thibodeau continues to build on what he did last year. He was up and down, but showed flashes of absolute greatness throughout the year. So they're hoping that that second year leap is there for him. Azeez Ojulari, I think him serving as like a pure speed rusher guy is a good complement to Thibodeau. So I expect this, as long as they can stay healthy. Azeez Ojulari just has been incapable of staying healthy. So I think that is where the concern comes with him. But if they can keep a healthy edge room, this is going to be a really effective pass rush, especially with how exotic the defense of strategy is from Martindale. You even get to some of the depth pieces here. Jihad Ward is sort of another version, I would say, of Leonard Williams, but more of an edge rusher than an interior guy. I think he can serve a real purpose if they want to go to a bigger set. If they're running like a 3 defensive lineman with the 2 edge guys, I think you could see him come in and be like the 4-I-5 technique in that and be actually pretty effective because he does have more athleticism than a guy his size should probably have. Habakkuk Baldonado, I think, is a real sleeper to make this team and actually get some playing minutes here with O'Shane Ximines and Ellerson Smith. I think as potentially outside guys looking in, I think that O'Shane Ximines will make the team before Ellerson Smith. But then you got guys who are designated as linebackers like a Cam Brown and a Carter Coughlin, who we'll get to, who could serve also as outside linebacker edge players in this defense as well, just because of how positionless it can become. So I think that does put Ellerson Smith and O'Shane Ximines at risk of not necessarily making the team, even though there's not a lot of edge guys necessarily on the roster. When you get to the interior guys in terms of a pass rush, there isn't a whole lot there. I wouldn't count on it. You got your Jihad Ward, who you could probably kick inside. Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence is really your 3 quote-unquote interior pass rushers. Rakeem Nunez-Roches, for some reason Giants fans are excited about him. I think a lot of people confuse him with William Golston. That's why people are excited about him. A'Shawn Robinson was just signed, but he's going to be a guy who's going to get early down work. DJ Davidson, second-year player. Hopefully you can get a step forward with him. Vernon Butler is like another big play, but he plays undersized. He plays smaller than what he is. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits. So here's the defensive line against the run, and Kayvon Thibodeau does take a little bit of a step down, but he is actually pretty solid as an edge guy in the run game. That was a strength of his last year. He didn't blow anyone. I don't think he blew anyone away necessarily, but I think it was more consistent than what we got from him as a pass rusher. Dexter Lawrence comes in. I think him playing what is looking to probably be a 3 technique in the run game with A'Shawn Robinson coming in to play the nose. Him working against guards is, I think there could be, I don't want to say, it's tough for an interior guy to win Defensive Player of the Year unless you're Aaron Donald. I think Dexter Lawrence potentially, when you added A'Shawn Robinson to this defensive line, I think it's going to open things up significantly for Dexter Lawrence this year in the run game specifically. And then Leonard Williams, if they run like a base 4-3 defense, he plays defensive end. I think he plays a 5 technique, and then Jihad Ward probably comes in as the other edge guy in the run game if they're going to run a traditional 3-4 front. Baldonado, Azeez Ojulari, O'Shane Ximines are sort of one and the same when it comes to their ability in the run game. Azeez obviously is making this team. So I think Baldonado and O'Shane Ximines is where a real competition is going to break out in the outside linebacker edge room. I think Ellerson Smith, again, I think he's sort of a camp body at this point when all is said and done just because of his inability in the run game. And then you get some of the interior guys. Again, not a whole lot of depth for the interior defensive line. It's a lot of veteran players, Rooney's Noches, Vernon Butler. DJ Davidson needs to really develop. I think he was a day 3 pick last year. So he's going to have to just continue to develop. You get these day 3 picks. They're always sort of projects anyway. So I think he'll get enough opportunities to show some development. As long as he shows some sort of development, I think he'll make the team over a Vernon Butler at the end of the day. So I don't think his roster spot is necessarily in jeopardy. So now we're going to get to the linebackers. And this was really the Giants', I don't want to say big, but it was a pretty big free agency signing on the defensive side of the ball. And that was Bobby Okereke. He is their 3-down linebacker. You can play him on passing downs. You can play some zone coverage. You can blitz a little bit. You can line up man coverage if the matchup is good, cover some running backs and some tight ends. And he can play really well in the run game. We'll get to that. And then it's who is going to play next to him. I would be a lot more optimistic about the linebacker room if Bobby Okereke was the number 2 linebacker. I think that's where he's sort of better served as a number 2 linebacker. When he's a number 1 linebacker, you're looking at, okay, we need somebody to break out then. Or else this linebacker room is still going to sort of be lesser than, which has been typical Giants fashion for the last decade. But they did draft Darian Beavers last year, who I was pretty high on. He ended up getting injured. They also drafted Micah McFadden. I think that's where the competition is going to lie. I think Beavers is going to end up getting the start because I do think he is the better player. But it wouldn't surprise me if Micah McFadden was able to compete with him and take some snaps from him. I think that between the two of them, we're going to see a bit of a rotation there, and Okereke is going to be the star of the group, I guess, so to speak. Then you got Cam Brown and Carter Coughlin, who are linebackers, but kind of outside linebackers. So where do they fit here? I think that on special teams, they're both really good, specifically Carter Coughlin. So I think that Coughlin, that's where he really makes the team, and I think that's where he'll get opportunities to shine and then potentially steal some snaps somewhere, maybe in the defense if he can show that he's taken a step forward in his ability to do that. In the run game, Okereke is better in the run game. I do like him coming in and helping with the run game at the linebacker position. But again, it's the same sort of story with the depth pieces. Darian Beavers is a little bit better in the run game. McFadden's a little bit better in the run game. I do like Beavers better in the run game than McFadden. That's sort of where I have him being the better overall player. I think they're relatively the same in the pass game, and Beavers just that little bit better in the run game. And that's where the snaps are going to come from. Coughlin and Brown sort of, they get that boost in the passing game just because of their blitzing ability and their ability to rush the passer from sort of the edge and the outside. But in the run game, I wouldn't be comfortable seeing them on the field. It's sort of like when Tay Crowder was the linebacker for this team. It was just like, what are you guys doing? Why is he out there? I know he got 165 tackles, but he missed probably like 64 tackles as well and gave up ridiculous passes over the middle on third downs. But yeah, it's just the linebacker group for the Giants. They did invest in it, so I can't be too mad, but it's still been such a glaring weakness for this team for so long. Now let's go take a look at the defensive backs in the pass coverage. And Adoree Jackson is the number 1 corner. I know people are probably looking at this grade and being like, why so low? I think that in the name of being a little responsible and understanding how this scheme works, I did lower some of the scores for the cornerbacks in particular. And that is because the way that they run this defense, these guys are going to be left on islands a lot. And we saw it last year with Adoree Jackson, where he had some really good games, but then he gave up some really bad plays. He's a little bit older. He's a year older. Maybe a little bit more beat up. I wonder if he's not on the down end of his career. And they brought in Deonte Banks, who as a rookie, when you leave a rookie out on an island a bit, unless he's Sauce Gardner, you're going to see some struggles there. You're going to see some holding penalties. You're going to see some pass interference penalties, which I think is fine for a rookie to do. But I don't expect that type of performance in his rookie year. I just don't. I think that if they drafted Joey Porter, they might have been in a better position. I'll stand by that. I like Deonte Banks' fit in the defense. I just kind of like Joey Porter overall better as a player. Then you got Cordell Flott, who was a slot guy at LSU, and I expect the drafting of Deonte Banks to put him into that spot. And I expect some success from him as well. He seemed to perform pretty well at camp also. Xavier McKinney, he is the safety you can sort of put anywhere. You can play him as a deep middle fielder. You can split him in a cover 2, and you can bring him up to the line of scrimmage as well. I think he's a really good versatile piece, and that really suits, again, this defensive scheme. Bobby McCain, same sort of deal. I think that he, as he's a little bit older now, play more of a safety role. But as a dime corner to come in, I think that there's some potential there as well. You look at the depth here. Again, Aaron Robinson, is he just a slot guy? I think that that's a real possibility that he is. Nick McLeod, who was expected to step up last year, and did in a lot of ways, but he's not somebody that you want on the field all the time. Trey Hawkins, who was drafted, again, I'm not trying to crown him based upon how he's played in camp, but there's a lot of potential there that he is like that day 3 breakout corner like a Tariq Woolen was. There's potential there. There is potential there for him. Him and Deonte Banks could potentially be a 1-2 punch, but I'm not ready to crown him. It is just training camp. Darnay Holmes and Amani Aruarie, who was brought in from Detroit, who looked good and then just had some horrific performances. I expect those two guys to really be roster bubble guys. Darnay Holmes mostly because he's just a slot guy, and they got a lot of those types on the roster right now. And he's getting just toasted, absolutely toasted in camp. It is tough to watch. And Aruarie is going to have to really step up his game if he wants to make the team. Jervarius Owens, I think, is a real sleeper in the passing game. Not so much in the run game, but in the pass game, I think he's a real sleeper to end up on that field, especially in a lot of the smaller sets where they like to have a lot of defensive backs on the field at once. I think you can put Jervarius Owens back at safety with, and then bring Xavier McKinney, Bobby McCain closer to the line of scrimmage. I think there's a lot that you can mix him in there with. I just think in the running game, he's going to be super ineffective. Jason Pinnock, everyone wants to be like, oh my God, how is he rated so low? Did you not see that catch? He made one play in camp. I love it. You love to see it. But again, one play in camp. I'm not ready to make him a 99 pass coverage safety yet. All right, and Dane Belton was overdrafted last year. Had some moments, but he also had some really bad moments. So now in run support, this is really where Deonte Banks and his aggressiveness, I think, is going to shine. He's not afraid to get aggressive in coverage. He's not afraid to be aggressive in run support either. I think that's going to be a real asset for them. Adoree Jackson, sort of the same way. He's sort of like this little scrappy guy. Cordell Flott is going to have to improve in run support. Xavier McKinney, a good run support safety. Bobby McCain, not so much. He's sort of been... Again, as his career has gone on, you sort of just have him out there, high IQ and pass coverage, playing in some zones. Aaron Robinson, actually quite good in the run support. This is where him and Cordell Flott, I think, will have some competition. Nick McLeod as well, I think, is quite good in that role. Jason Pinnock, because of how great he is on special teams, and he is a bigger, more aggressive guy as well, I think he can be a real asset in the run game. And again, let's take that one play in pass coverage in training camp, and let's spread that out throughout the season in actual games for once. And I think that could help Pinnock maybe find his way into the starting lineup and taking a bulk of the snaps away from a guy like Bobby McCain. Javarius Owens, not, again, like I said, not somebody that's good in run support. Dane Belton, sort of the same story. He's going to have to drastically improve on what he did last year. Darnay Holmes and Amani Oruwariye are just... The dream is over for Darnay Holmes. Bloom is off the ropes. I think he gets cut, and that run is over. So just going over the positional summaries here, I think in terms of starters, you're getting quality, but as you can see, my concerns with this defense are in the depth. I think the depth on this defense in general is not very strong. I think they got maybe in the secondary for the corners, I think they got one good backup, Aaron Robinson. Safeties, I think, you can mix in one or two guys. Linebackers, there's really no depth. If Bobby Okereke gets hurt, it immediately becomes the worst linebacking group in the NFL by a wide margin. The edge group, Jihad Ward, not being a pure edge does affect, how if they lose Azeez Ojulari, they kind of loses the speed rush completely. And in the run game, I think if you lose Kayvon Thibodeau, you've lost a quality edge setter, and I think that's going to really affect them as well. So unfortunately, they've been set up where one injury to the wrong player could throw the entire defense into shambles, but I think if they can stay healthy, they'll be okay. And this is what I mean by if they stay healthy, they'll be okay. I think the 13th pass defense is a fair grade to have. I think because they play super aggressive, they're going to have a lot of success, but they are going to have that boom or bust potential a lot. The run defense is below average. I think that comes with depth. That comes with just the type of players that they have on the interior defensive line. They could be better. We'll say that. They could be better in that aspect. Overall, though, just about middle of the pack, just slightly above middle of the pack, slightly above average defense, which, again, if the offense can perform really well, then the style of defense that they play is conducive to winning. So there is that potential there. I just fear that because they play so aggressively, it is something that will open them up to fall behind in games like we saw in the playoff game against Philly, where they play super aggressive, but Philly's offense was able to execute and they got ahead super quick, and then they just weren't able to make the comeback. I think that leaves they're vulnerable to that. So here's the record prediction. And like I said, 9-8, same amount of wins as last year, even though they are a better team. I mean, they get Arizona, they get the Vegas Raiders, they get Washington twice, they get New England, they get the Rams, who aren't very good, especially late in the year. The Rams don't have a lot of depth at all. So unless they stay super healthy and they have breakout guys, that's going to be maybe a cakewalk game. I don't think that they're at the level of Dallas and Philadelphia, which is why I have them getting swept by both of those teams. They also have the AFC East, Miami, Buffalo, and the Jets. I don't think that they're as good as those teams. I think that the matchups are a bit of a nightmare. I think they can beat New England. The problem is I look at some of the losses that I have for them, and it's tough for me to pick out where the wins come from, where added wins can come from. I think with the games I have them winning, it's hard to pick out where they're going to lose. So this might be the most accurate schedule prediction that I do this whole year, is them winning these exact games. Maybe they steal the week 18 game against Philadelphia because Philadelphia has the division lockdown. They got their seeding lockdown, and the Giants might be competing for a spot there. So maybe they can steal that just because Philly shuts it down in the last week. But I think with how competitive Dallas is and San Francisco, Philly will at least have something to play for probably in that last game of the year, which is going to work against my boys. So just running through a quick summary: 9-8, third in the division, fifth in the conference, a wide open NFC. I think that they are still a playoff team. I think they can even afford to go 8-9, and they'll still be a playoff team in this conference. 13th in the league. They have the 8th coaching staff, which has tremendous effect on the players like we saw last year, and it'll continue to have an effect on these players, which is why this team has a top 10 offense, why they are a top half defense. And really the only glaring issue that they have is going to be in the run defense and in the overall depth of the roster. That's where this team could be in jeopardy. The wrong injury to the wrong player could throw a huge monkey wrench into this team. And there it is, my number 13 team in my 2023 Deep Dive Series. My New York Giants, not wearing the shirt. What a fail. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and comment to help out with the algorithms, like I said at the top, and subscribe if you haven't already. We are winding down this series. We've already had the Hall of Fame game get played. I somehow have better lighting than that game does, but we will not talk about that. And I will see you guys with the next video, which, they'll be on either side of my head. All the stuff that's available for the series. Thank you for coming.